December 7th, 2000 was not just an ordinary day in Ghana. It was a day of decision, a day of hope, and for many, a day of fear. As early as 5 a.m., Ghanaians queued up patiently at the various polling stations across the 200 constituencies of the nation. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, the era of one man was coming to an end. Little did they know that the events that will happen in the next couple of days will not only change the political scene in Ghana, but also will be a benchmark for democracy across the continent of Africa. This is the story of the Ghana 2000 presidential elections, and elections many people describe as one of the scariest elections ever held on the continent of Africa. But we cannot talk about these elections without talking about an event that happened in 1981 and 1979. On June 4, 1979, a group of junior rank soldiers of the Ghana Armed Forces staged a coup to depose the then head of state, Lieutenant General Fred Akuffo, and his Supreme Military Council regime. This group, called the Armed Forces Revolutionary Council, AFAC, was led by Flight Lieutenant John Rawlings, who then became the new head of state. The AFAC ruled the country for the next 112 days before handing over power to a democratically elected president, Dr. Hilla Limann.
Council, during our short stay in power, have demonstrated openly what many people had only suspected before, namely that the holding of office in government in this country had in almost all cases been used to plunder the wealth of the nation. Ghana is looking up to you. Thank you.
But democracy would not last long. On New Year's Eve 1981, Limann was overthrown in another coup. Once again, John Rawlings returned to power. Rawlings suspended the constitution, dissolved parliament, and replaced them with the Provisional National Defense Council, the PNDC.
December 1981.
Today, we initiated a holy war.
Flight Lieutenant Jerry Rawlings stages his second coup.
To this end, the following measures are hereby taken. 1. The 1979 Third Republican Constitution of Ghana is suspended. 2. For the avoidance of any doubts, the following are emphasized. A. The President, the Vice President, and all ministers and their deputies are dismissed from office. B. Parliament is dissolved. C. The Council of State is abolished. D. All political parties are proscribed. It is therefore illegal for any person or persons to belong to or operate under any party.
For over a decade, Ghana was under military rule. There were schools, roads, hospitals, but there was no democracy. In 1981, Rawlings formed the Consultative Assembly with the main aim of drafting the new constitution for the country. In 1992, Ghanaians approved the new constitution by referendum. It introduced term limits, separation of powers, and a return to multi-party democracy. The first general elections under the newly approved 1992 Constitution was held on 3rd November. This will bring the 11 years reign of the PNDC to an end. Rawlings contested the election as a civilian under his newly formed political party, the National Democratic Congress, NDC. His main opponent was Professor Eduboahe, who led the newly formed New Patriotic Party (NPP). Other presidential candidates included former President Dr. Hilla Limann of the People's National Congress (PNC), Kwabena Darko of the National Independence Party (NIP), and Emmanuel Ekisin of the People's Heritage Party (PHP). Rawlings won the election with a massive 58.40% of the popular vote cast. After Rawlings was declared the winner, the opposition NPP accused the government of engaging in a massive fraud, including ballot box stuffing and altering of certified results. He was sworn in as the first president of the Fourth Republic on January 7, 1993. Rawlings will again contest for the 1996 general elections, but this time will defeat the new candidate for the NPP, John Kufuor, by winning 57.37% of the popular votes against Kufuor's 39.67%. By the year 2000, one fact was clear: Jerry John Rawlings could not run again. For the first time in 19 years, Ghana faced life after Rawlings. So, in the year 2000, all political parties in the country were ready and gearing up for the upcoming elections. December 7, 2000 general elections saw a massive turnout from the Electoral College. The two main candidates were Vice President Professor John Evans Athamels, representing the ruling NDC, and John Kufuor of the NPP. There were other 5 candidates as well: Edward Mahama of PNC, George Hagan from CPP, Augustus Tano of NRP, Dan Latte of GCPP, and Dr. Charles Rekubrebe of UGM. One notable incident that happened prior to the election day was when 9 members of the opposition NPP were arrested in a Rambo style by a joint task force of the police and the military at Akati in the Volta region, a major stronghold of the ruling NDC. The members were said to have been surrendered by a police jeep, 2 military Toyota Land Cruisers, 2 motorbikes, and a military helicopter above them. Election day was not spared with controversies as well. There were several reports of groups attacking polling stations across the country. People were being arrested for trying to vote once and impersonation. In the capital, Accra, armed security personnel stormed Peace FM after allegations of cross-border voting were heard. Elections ended at 5 p.m. in most parts of the country, and right away, the counting and the collation process began. Kufuor, who was projected to win the elections, took an early lead, and his supporters started jubilating instantly. To put icing on the cake, the NPP held a press conference telling their supporters that they have already won the elections. After collating the results from all the 200 constituencies, the chairman of the Electoral Commission, Dr. Kojo Afarijan, on 10th December announced that there will be a runoff election between the first 2 candidates, since none of the candidates was able to acquire the 50% plus 1 vote threshold from the popular vote cast as per the 1992 Constitution states. John Kufuor and the NPP had 3,131,739, representing 48.17%. Professor John Evans Athamels and the NDC had 2,895,575, representing 44.54% of the popular vote cast. This announcement by the EC was met with mixed feelings from the general public. To the NDC, it was a sign of relief, an opportunity to do their homework well. And for the NPP, they alleged that the Rawlings administration was trying to rig the elections in favor of the NDC. Staffs of TV3, a private-owned television station that telecasts the press conference by the NPP, were attacked at the NDC's party headquarters. The attackers alleged that the staffs of the television station were spies for the opposition party. It took the intervention of some party officials to calm the attackers down. Meanwhile, in the Upper East region of the country, a dusk to dawn curfew was imposed after supporters of both parties crashed during the jubilation, which resulted in several people from both sides getting injured and destruction of properties. The 2000 presidential runoff election was held on December 28th, and from the get-go, things started getting interesting. Armed men in military uniforms stormed a polling station in the Ablekuma North constituency in the Greater Accra region, and when the MP for the area, Mr. Kwame Battles of the opposition NPP, confronted them, he was said to have been assaulted and stabbed in the chest. Two members of the MP's entourage too were said to have sustained some gunshot injuries. There was also an incident at Odoko, a suburb of Accra, where armed men were said to have stormed a polling station and destroyed the voters' register and some ballot papers as well. It took a timely intervention of the military in 3 separate incidents in the northern part of the country when supporters of both parties crashed at their respective polling stations, which resulted in several people getting injured. The voting came to an end across the country at 5 p.m. and in the next 24 hours, the whole country will be on a high alert as EC officials and party executives collate the election results. Tensions were calm and a feel of jubilation were heard across the country when it was reported that the Vice President and also the candidate for the ruling NDC, Professor John Evans Athamels, has conceded defeat and called the opposition leader, John Agyekum Kufuor, to congratulate him on winning the elections. The EC, a couple of hours later, proceeded in declaring the results. John Agyekum Kufuor of the NPP had 3,631,263, representing 56.90%, whilst Professor John Evans Athamels of the NDC had 2,750,124, representing 43.10% of the popular vote cast. Now, the big question remains: will Jerry John Rawlings accept the electoral results and step down as president after 19 years? On the 31st of December 2000, a day after the Electoral Commission has declared John Agyekum Kufuor as the winner of the 2000 presidential election, President Rawlings, together with the military, held a parade at the Ewak Sports Stadium in Accra to celebrate the 19 years of the 1981 revolution, the revolution that brought him to power as a military officer. The people of Ghana were on the alert, especially the NPP and President-elect John Agyekum Kufuor. Reports indicate that some embassies and diplomats were ready to leave the country should the president reject the election results and suspend the constitution for the 3rd time. So, when the president took to the podium to address the military personnel present at the stadium, not only was the entire nation watching, but also the international community as well. Then came the big announcement. Jerry John Rawlings, in his 30-minute speech, declared that he will ensure a smooth transition of power to the president-elect, John Agyekum Kufuor and the NPP, and will also provide some counseling wherever he is called upon. This was followed by a massive jubilation across the country, with many international bodies commending Ghana for upholding a peaceful election despite the high level of tension and some few violent incidents. John Agyekum Kufuor was sworn in as the 2nd president of the 4th Republic on January 7, 2001. Ghana had passed its greatest democratic test. He was re-elected as president in 2004 and served the full 8-year tenure of office. He handed the mantle to Professor John Evans Athamels of the NDC on January 7, 2009, after Professor Mills pulled a miracle in the 2008 presidential elections against Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo of the NPP. This trend of events has become the cornerstone of Ghana's democracy and Africa as a whole. These elections has become a case study when it comes to elections across the continent of Africa. A classical example is the 2010 La Côte d'Ivoire elections, where 2 separate candidates, President Laurent Gbagbo and opposition leader Alassane Ouattara, were both declared winners, and sworn in as president by two separate institutions, a decision which resulted in the La Côte d'Ivoire Civil War in 2010 and 2011, a civil war that lasted for 5 months. Thank you for watching. See you another time.